Today, our design systems help build great experiences for our customers. And this is a recording from Open Source Friday, where I sit down and talk to Alex Page about their design system from Shopify and how they're supporting over 1 million businesses in their admin dashboard. Now, if you're interested in learning about the latest and greatest in design systems, you're in the right place. So let's go and jump right in. So why don't you give us like a quick introduction on what Polaris is and what you're trying to do?
Yeah, so Polaris is Shopify's design system. It's built for our admin product. So I'll get into that a bit later on, but our admin is where our merchants go to manage their stores. So if you go to shopify.com and you create an account, or if you log in and you're selling t-shirts or you're selling whatever product it is, you need this like admin interface. So admin interface has lots of lists. It's like, show me a list of all the orders that have came in today, show me a list of all the products I maintain, show me a list of all the customers that have bought things from me. So Polaris really is like a tool for like building these reusable pieces across this admin experience. And when you then click on one of these list items, you get lots of forms. So Polaris is very form heavy, it's very list heavy. It's really about trying to create a consistent experience for our users. So when someone goes to a list of customers, we would hope that it works very similar to a list of orders, because they're starting to learn these different patterns and experiences. But we are also noticing other problems with this conformity. So I want to touch on that a little bit too. As we build a design system, we hope that we consolidate designs and we sort of create consistent experiences. But in doing that, we also sometimes sacrifice the quality of design. So a really good example that I can think of recently that shipped was we added some analytics that sit above your orders. So you can sort of see there was a really big spike of orders on this day, and it's a really cool dark mode card that looks very different to other areas of the admin. And this is really cool to see because it sort of challenges the conventions of the design system and maybe even pushes it to be something bigger or something better than what it originally was. And so we're sort of trying to figure out this way of how do we create this cohesion and this consistent experience, but also enable teams in Shopify to, build above that. We don't want you to just go and copy paste a button code snippet. We want you to challenge that, understand why that button is built that way, and create the best button for your user at that point of time. So it's a really interesting space in terms of us trying to create this, cohesion, but also trying to enable creativity and push the experiences forward across our company.
Yeah, excellent. And there's already a question in the chat too, is about the name for Polaris. Is it does it have anything to do with being true north or the North Star?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely controversial, inside our company, because we definitely don't see Polaris as the true north. And if a lot of people understand Polaris as the North Star, and it tells you where to go, and I think that could have been the intention in the past. I think a reframe on that would be I know where north is, and I'm going to use that direction to go south. I'm going to use that direction to go east. And I think we would much rather that kind of thinking, where it's I understand why these design decisions were made, but I also want to break them, and I don't want to go true north, because if I go true north, then I'm going to give the user the most, I don't know, we want people to give the user the best experience they can, and if you go that true north, you're usually sacrificing and creating trade-offs that don't lead to the best experience. So
my thought directly goes to hamburger menus. That could be the North Star 5 years ago, actually probably 8, 9, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But maybe this is a better answer.
Yeah, totally. I think what am I trying? I think if I look at the lists in Shopify, I think resource list is a really good example. This shows up everywhere in our interface, and even radio buttons and all the time. And I think I'd even challenge that to be this pattern exists, but just because there is a radio button pattern or there is a resource list pattern doesn't mean that is the default that you should use. Maybe changing that or building something new or expanding on that would actually give your users a much better experience. So that comes with a lot of problems though, because the system we've created is, as of today, very strict and very focused on this one design and this one approach. And if you wanted to have a different experience, or you wanted to build something different, you get yourself into a very tricky place. You're either forking things and then you're like off the maintenance path. You have to maintain it yourself. You have to write your own tests, or you are maybe using the thing as is and you're just hacking things in there, and that also like doesn't become the best for maintenance. Like maybe you do a breaking change and now that breaking change is a lot harder for your team. So we're trying to find a way to, I almost describe it as like breaking down some of these components into a lot smaller pieces and giving teams the ability to like build above or like build on top of these pieces that we're creating. So yeah.
Cool. And so this is an open source project, which is why you're here on Open Source Friday. And
Yeah.
part of the reason why I reached out, and I just realized I haven't started the project. So there you go,
Nice.
giving you one more star. And so I'm curious, because you work at Shopify, you're a Shopify employee, you work on this design system team. How do you approach suggestions or contributions? Or better question probably is, do you find other people outside of Shopify using this?
Yeah, so Polaris is definitely positioned in a difficult place because we wanted lots of third-party developers who are building applications inside the admin to use Polaris, because we were like, well, it makes sense. Like you're building something in this experience, let's try and make it cohesive. Also, we've built like all these best practices for accessibility and performance into there. But then that also has another downside, which is like people start to assume this third-party app is Shopify, and if it's built poorly and it's built poorly using Polaris, then like is Shopify like not a high performing application?
Yeah.
So we're in this tricky spot of like we don't really want people to use it if it looks exactly like Polaris, but we do want people to use it because we think that there's lots of benefits. But the main audience for this product is actually internal teams. Like our key focus is how do we uplift and unlock and enhance the quality of our admin product with this library. And that becomes really difficult with it being in public because we get so, I think if you look at the issue count and the pull request count, like there's 226 and 75, and some of these are real issues and real problems, but like they're definitely not as high priority as the other things we're thinking about. And some of the things that we're thinking about now, where we're like, how do we break down these components or re-architect them or solve some of these more foundational technical problems, are a lot higher priority to us than say like updating some translations. Like that's one pull request that I can see in there. Like that can sit there for a little bit. We'll ship that, but like there's no rush.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely interesting.
So how do you do, since it sits in between, how do you do the planning of like strategy and where you're going as far as
Yeah.
how do you establish a North Star for project management?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So a lot of our planning actually happens sort of internally with our internal team. So there was a point in time where I think I even created a repository. It's called like GitHub Project Automation Plus. And I pretty much just made it so every single issue and every single pull request that came into this repo went into like a backlog in GitHub projects.
Yeah.
And then we could like drag things into your progress, but it wasn't useful. That's not to say GitHub projects wasn't useful. It's just like all this information wasn't useful.
Yeah.
And following like the issues and the pull requests that came in wasn't actually impactful to our teams internally or to our merchants who are using our products. So what we ended up doing was working a lot closely with these teams. So right now we're working with the delivery team in Shopify. Shout out to their team, they do awesome work, but we're really trying to understand the sort of component problems that they're trying to address. So they have a lot of duplicated patterns in the admin or forked components that they want to consolidate, and that they want to almost like break down and make more cohesive, make more like how the polaris-react system is created. So we'll work with them to help them achieve that goal, and we'll be bringing the like systems mindset and like challenging to like the way that they're approaching those problems. But like they're very close to the business and to the merchant. They understand those problems deeply. So there's a really nice balance there of like, for us to figure out what to do, we work with these teams that are like solving these hard problems to like address that. But we don't have a public roadmap, and that is definitely a challenging thing with an open source repository like this. You can create an issue and it can sit there and maybe not even get a reply. And I don't feel good about that, honestly. Like if this, like I think we need to like have those conversations, but There's just so many big problems that it makes it hard to like being a great open source advocate to all those things that we're doing as well.
Yeah, and that's something that full disclosure, folks who are sitting here, I work at GitHub, got a sweater on and everything like that, so it makes it official when you wear the sweater. But this is like the conversation I have with maintainers like yourself of projects, and having this sort of like weird balance of internal, external conversation. And like sometimes in projects, issues might not be the first interaction. A lot of times are issues. You open an issue, conversation gets started. Sometimes the conversation needs to be something more synchronous, or maybe there's like a sort of I'm not making suggestions, but maybe design system panel or conversation where folks can just talk about, oh, I use Polaris. I would just want to have conversations to get some of these answers out of the way. And I know like some other GitHub open source projects internally, they're maintained internally, but they use publicly. We have like some standing like bi-weekly meetings where people can come join like a Zoom call or a Discord stream, and this sort of hang out with folks, get questions, and basically get some of the answers I'm getting right now from you, get those in like a place where it's like a safe space for you to ask those questions. Which, speaking of which, if you have questions and maybe you use Polaris, or maybe you work at Shopify and you've always wanted to ask questions to the design system, someone who represents that, just drop them in the chat.
Yeah, do it.
But I did want to transition over to, because you had prepared some sort of walkthroughs and demos. Did you want to prep your screen? I could switch over to that.
Yeah, can you see it okay?
Let me switch to your screen, and there we go. So now we're looking at the Polaris website.
Yeah, so I just wanted to sort of like step through a few of those patterns that I talked about. So if I went to like a resource list, can sort of just have a look at like maybe just also like some of the challenges that we face as like a design system team, like with these gigantic components. So if I go and say with all its elements, you can kind of see it's got like a search, it's got tags that you can add. These tags show up down here as well when you write them in. We got bulk editors. So these components are much bigger and have a lot of, I'd say, almost like business logic in them as well, which becomes really hard to maintain. This is a big problem that we're trying to address right now. But I wanted to also like take this example and show just quickly in my like test store, like what this looks like. So when you own a Shopify store, like this is your experience. Like when you log in, you can sort of see that you've got one order to fulfill. There's no information here that's like, I don't know, bad. Like it's just all me doing fake orders, but you can sort of see like, here's one order, it costs $1. You can bulk select them. You can sort of do these sorts of things, but then you can also go to draft orders. So a lot of these patterns sort of flow throughout the system. So it's just lists and forms. So if I go to products, I can see there's a product called potato. I can click into the potato product and sort of like see all this information and go and edit it. But like all these little pieces that we're seeing are bits of Polaris. So first to like highlight this area, like this is our page component, and our page component sort of has the pagination, or we call it pagination, but it's like a back button to go back to the previous page. It has some key actions. It has titles. It has the layout as well. So everything that sort of gets centered in this middle area. But like all of these little pieces are bits of Polaris. So if I went back to here and we had a quick look at page, we can kind of see that like this is what it's talking about. Like we can see this sort of app frame, then there's the page component which lives inside the app frame. So lots of layers of pieces fitting together.
Yeah.
But it's very different. I also wanted to paint a picture that like Shopify as a company does lots of different things. Like we have our Shopify.com site, which just doesn't use Polaris. And we wouldn't even expect them to, because it's built for a different audience. It's built for a different problem. If they were to use our typography here, like this title would not look good. I think if we go and have a look at, I don't know, heading as a component, you can kind of see like that's probably our biggest heading in the admin, because we have really tight UI. And if you were to use that heading size here in this product, it just wouldn't be a good experience for users. And it would be almost confusing around like, what is like, when I come to this page, what is this company trying to get me to do?
Yeah.
But if I go back to this product, very useful. Like this title doesn't need to take up a lot of space, but it gives me a clear indication of where I am. So yeah, I just wanted to like sort of paint this picture of variance, and also why we care about variance, because Like if we look at developers, Shopify.dev, our development hub, like shout out to the team that redesigned this. I love this design with all the sort of like pixel
Yeah.
art. But again, like very different, and it's built for a different audience, different application. So they don't use the design system, and I think like celebrating that in a way is also a really important thing. Like we want teams to use the system to solve problems, but we also don't want the teams to use the system if it's going to like create a worse experience for their user.
Yeah, and I have some background. So my previous employer was Netlify, and I was like early conversations in building out their design system. It was like my first experience too in being involved in any of those conversations. And they made an early decision to have a marketing design system versus a just a general development admin dashboard design system. So I'm curious, does Shopify have multiple design systems to maybe
Yeah.
the dev team also approach with this?
Yeah, so we definitely do, and that's something we're interested in like exploring, but it's not something we're thinking about right now. I think like we have our marketing design system, which I think some parts of this website are built with, and other parts are custom. We have a Rails design system, which like sort of takes a lot of our React components and puts them into Rails. We have the React design system. So there's like lots of different layers, even if it's just by split by technology or if it's split by user. But like there are some interesting things though. Like we would love, and maybe we're a bit away from this, but we'd love to like have logic for a modal or a pop-up. I think if I write a search here, so you can kind of see like, see how this page goes gray
Yeah.
when you start a search. Like the same thing happens when you open a modal. Like the page goes gray and like maybe the scroll disables. In this case, the scroll's enabled. But like these patterns start becoming really reusable pieces, and we would love like teams to not have to rewrite them all the time. So if I talk about the example of a modal, like when a modal opens, I try and think of a good example of where there's a modal. I mean, maybe even like here, like same sort of thing, like things
Yeah.
pop up and it's like, you need to position that thing on the page. It needs to sit above other elements. It needs to maybe have a shadow. Like there's lots of different patterns that I think get replicated just in these smaller pieces that we definitely want to make more accessible to teams. So if a team was building a modal from scratch, maybe they could go read some guidance, which sort of says like, when a modal opens, the page scroll should stop. It should be positioned in the middle of the page. Pressing the escape button should close the modal. Like there's lots of different layers there that we would almost not want every single team to think about across Shopify. But we also understand that like teams need to use the right technology for the problems they're solving, and the design system isn't the right technology for every team and every problem they're solving. So it's definitely a challenge. Well, the Polaris design system as it is today.
Okay, awesome. Um, there was a question that came in the chat before we switched to your screen, but I wanted to ask because it kind of segues into what we're talking about. Which
Yeah.
Elenik actually dropped this in the chat, which was, what would you say the motivation for internal teams to start consolidating their patterns to work with something like the Polaris team?
Yeah, like the motivation there, there's a lot of different things, right? Like one could even be working in that way will give them a lot less maintenance. So if they want to build new features or if they want to change, or like I think one thing we're discussing is like, if we look at the admin today, it's very white. Maybe they wanted to do something a bit more, I don't know. We kind of have been using this phrase spiky, which is just like different. And if we look at like Shopify.dev, like this is spiky. It's very different. It's not something you would expect to see from Shopify. But if a team in here in this UI wanted to do something spiky or wanted to challenge some of these patterns, it'd be a lot easier to challenge them if they had like a smaller amount of things to maintain. Because if they had, I don't know, some teams I think would be maintaining upwards of 100 plus components in this admin interface. If they could reduce that down to 30 or even 40 components, it's a lot easier for them to experiment and challenge and build new features or new functionality. And that's something that we would like really love to like enable or empower these teams to do.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And it's like my next question would be like, how do you approach, because like design seems to always have iterations change. It seems like when one company does something, a lot of other companies follow suit. Like basically, I guess I'm talking about trends and patterns. So
Yeah.
like, how would you approach applying a new trend or a new pattern into Polaris?
Yeah, so the tokens I would say is our like a big part of that. So if I go to like maybe I just go to our design page. So lots of these pieces that we see here, like highlighted, are tokens. So you can kind of see here that like there's this green color, and this green color is called border success subdued, and that's sort of like our token value for this color. And what this means is if we wanted to go, this is maybe a better image actually. You can sort of see like border success subdued is like the top line, icon success is the icon color, and surface success subdued is like the background color on this little section. It's really small, so if I try and zoom in a little bit. So that's really helpful, but like when we want to pivot or adjust or change, like now we're just changing these semantic values. So say that we wanted to experiment with success colors, maybe being more vibrant or higher contrast or a little bit more in your face, like maybe that's like there's a bit more attitude in this design. This becomes a really powerful system or platform for us to go and do this. So Polaris Tokens is a private repo. Otherwise, I'd love to like step you through that, but it has a lot of our, I'd say almost like variables or like values that we sort of define for our design. So typography is another great example. Like you can kind of see, this is display extra large, and that has these values. This is display large. So if we wanted to make a big sweeping change to our type scale, we could come in here and we could make that adjustment, which is really great.
Okay, cool. And I'm always curious about this question too as well. Like, what are some maybe this is stepping away a little bit from Polaris, but what are some trends that you're seeing? Because you showed the Shopify dev site. Um,
Yeah.
it seems like this feels fresh. It feels like I've seen not this exact approach, but like I feel like I'm going to see more sites that look like this in the future.
Yeah.
So I'm curious of like what are some interesting things you've seen in the sort of the design UI world that you've taken note of.
Yeah, I mean, this is maybe a cop out, but I think like Tailwind is a really big trendsetter right now. And
Yeah.
the things that I spot straight away is like the vibrant colors, the gradients. This has always stood out to me when I've like gone to this Tailwind site, that their like choice of color and the way that they like interlock these gradients just really, I think, is a pattern that I think is proven to be successful. So that's something that really, I think, like stands out to me. I think also this, whatever this font family is, I see it everywhere
Is it
now.
the
So
I think it's the enter. I've
yeah,
checked that multiple times. But
yeah,
yeah.
it's a very popular font family.
Yeah.
I've seen that show up everywhere now, but I think these like thick, dark layers of typography is like really something that stands out. And this is just as an aside, this isn't my expertise. I have much more talented people in my team that like have opinions on this,
Got it.
but this is the sort of stuff that I think personally when I think of like design trends right now.
Yeah, and I've definitely stolen a bit of those trends from. Actually, I've used Tailwinds in some of including my personal site, BW
Yeah,
Live, mainly because I just don't have the bandwidth to go and try to do something nuanced or keep up to date with things.
totally.
So that's what I love about design systems is that if I could have some solved problems, because I could connect a Redux store and maybe a backend API like no one's business, but when it comes to making decisions around modals or I was actually
Yeah,
really intrigued around this clicking and activating the search box and graying out the rest of the screen. I've never thought
yeah,
about that, but it's a great idea because it
yeah.
gives the focus to like, okay, you're searching this and start typing, and you'll see something else happen. Um, yeah, just mind blowing. And every time I see a trend or I find a design system that makes good use of my eyeballs and like getting stuff to me as quickly as possible, I just appreciate it so much more.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, it's a really interesting space to be in because it's the intersection of code and design, and like we also like as a company we're trying to hire I think some ridiculous number. I think it's like 2021 developers this year.
Wow.
Um, and to hire 2021 developers and to give them a really powerful design system for the product, like the admin product, means that like they don't have to be masters at everything, but we do want them to still work closely with design teams and like challenge those decisions they're making. But if they don't have to think about every single layer of how a modal should work or how a search box should like attract focus, I think that's a win. And I think there's a lot of areas that design systems can help in that space.
Yeah, that's really awesome too as well. So as we're sort of winding down, I'm curious, anything else you want to show about Polaris, or if folks are interested
Yeah.
in getting involved? You mentioned hiring. Is your specific team hiring?
I am trying to hire a senior engineering manager and a senior front-end developer. So there's two roles that I'm trying to hire on my team right now. So if you're interested, you can just reach out to me on Twitter, @AlexPage_, and more than happy to have a chat. But those two roles that I'm trying to hire right now.
Shopify, is it remote friendly, or you all have to be in certain
Yeah,
areas?
we're a 100% remote company. Our team in particular even has people in Portugal, on the East Coast, on the West Coast, in the middle of America. I don't want to like try and act like I remember all the places. Sorry, team. But like we have a pretty big team, and like we're getting pretty international as well. Like we'll have a few people moving to Sweden, so we're trying to figure out all those things of like how do we work as an international team, which is really exciting.
Yeah, the answer is GitHub. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of
Yeah,
it's one of the answers.
excellent.
Yeah, so maybe just quickly, like I won't show this, but like this was that project I was talking about before, just to like help us manage thousands of issues and pull requests. Um, I did want to talk a little bit about creating a foundational system. So
Yeah.
like we were talking about a lot of the problems. Well, I mean, maybe we didn't talk about a lot of the problems, but like Polaris is very focused on this admin experience. And we really want to elevate this and build, I'd say, spikier, more interesting experiences in this space. And the current system is very opinionated and built for a very strong focus. So we've been sort of like experimenting in the open. And I wanted to talk about this because I think this is really interesting to sort of like work in the open in a very like prototyping fashion. But like we have, I don't know why I need to log in to see discussions, but that's fine. This is all open. We have a whole bunch of like open source conversations here that, they're very focused on what our team needs, or what our team is thinking about. But like if I go into like replacing SaaS, this is a really interesting discussion that we started around like the problems that we're feeling using SaaS as a design system team and how we think that we could like address them. So we sort of went through a whole bunch of examples. We even created a like open source spreadsheet that people could like drop into, and we got a lot of positive feedback around this like way of thinking and doing research. So I just wanted to share this as like I don't know, like just a different way of like building new open source projects or like trying to figure out problems, because I think that this is a really interesting way of doing that.
Yeah, yeah. That's really cool too as well. And I just realized I've been showing off the Polaris React.
Yeah, so
Right.
polaris-react
Yeah.
is our main repository. This
Got it.
is a prototype for us like building what we think could be the next evolution of polaris-react.
Okay.
I wouldn't say there's anything in here that anyone using polaris-react would need to worry about today, but like we really want to like we want to start thinking without restrictions of like where could Polaris go? Like how could we build a foundation to enable like greater variation of design, and just starting fresh and playing around has been a really great way to like build opinions on that.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. This all exciting stuff. It makes me excited to get back into writing code. I don't do a lot of
Yeah,
code for my day job, but I do tons of code for my night job, which is open source. It's not.
yeah.
It's really not a job. I don't get paid for it. Um, but we've switched to leveraging Storybook for open source, which is my side project, and
Nice.
I have a design system, and it's basically if you took Netlify's design system but went back 5 years when I used to work there. That's exactly what open source design system is, because I built at the same time we were building Netlify's, and it feels like it's still stuck in 2017 because I don't have the thought and the idea. So if anybody wants to contribute to that project, please come through.
Is
Um,
that open sourced? Like there's a sneaky design system in there with
yeah,
Storybook?
yeah, yeah. Storybook basically gets deployed whenever you
Nice.
merge a PR. So I use GitHub Actions, which we didn't actually
Do
even
you,
cover that. I was curious to learn more about your uses, your more of your GitHub use cases and actions and stuff like that. But go ahead with
oh yeah. Yeah, we love GitHub Actions. Like we have some, I'd say like nothing too crazy. We need to like, this is actually looking pretty good, but like we had the old K-sheet in here, but this has been updated. But like we have some like simple CI stuff that runs and like accessibility tests, which is really awesome. It really helps us like quickly gain confidence on pull requests. Like, are these meeting our expectations? Another one that I really liked was size limit. So you
Yeah.
can check out this one, but it's a really powerful tool to just see how PRs are impacting the sizes of packages. So as a component library, we would love to like see a reduction in the size of the things that we want to maintain. So we're trying to be very, I don't know, very conscious of when things are growing. And this action is a really powerful way. So you can kind of see if someone goes and modifies this file in this way, it's a 46% increase. And if we saw something like that, it's a really quick and easy way to get like a red flag of like, cool, this is doing things that we wouldn't expect. Some of the things that we'd love to add is I'd love to add a better release process. Like right now we use some internal tools and it's just not working how we would like it to work. But it's really secure and I like that because I don't like to think about security problems. The other thing that I think that is like top of mind would be something like Google Lighthouse, just like running that sort of extension, just like check for like accessibility, performance, like just some quick benchmarks, just to make sure that we are like not having any regressions as we like make changes. But usually that happens in our top hatting. So top hatting is just what we call testing. You put a top hat on and check if
I've never heard that term before, but that's great.
Yeah, I think the idea is like, you want to put yourself in the user's shoes. So put a top hat on and think how they could break it. And yeah, it's a really nice phrase. It's used a lot at Shopify.